Tell parents, you're like a training wheel on a bike. Your job isn't to make the bike move. Your job is to keep the bike upright.
Those of us who are the true educators, we really want to be given the opportunity to educate the whole child.
We can get free college degrees based on all of the opportunities that are out there.
Y'all are going to be great.
To our students.
Oftentimes, as parents,
Just be
we
yourselves.
want to protect our kids, but I think one of the greatest gifts we can give them is allow them to experience adversity.
Here are your hosts, David and Danita Bailey.
Well, welcome to School Days, Help for Moms and Dads of School-Age Kids. I'm Danita Bailey.
And I'm David Bailey.
The superintendent is the CEO of a school district and responsible for implementing goals set by the board of directors and ensuring the success of our children. Today, we'll get an insider's look at how a school district is run and how decisions are made that impact the leaders of tomorrow. So, Dave, you taught for 10 years, and, did you ever think about leaving the classroom and going into administration at all? I kind of know the answer, but
yeah, well,
tell our listeners.
I mean, early on, I think I was just so focused on teaching and just trying to learn, the ways of a teacher. It really wasn't on my mind. And then I think as I came into Mansfield and taught, I just began to observe. Just really began to pay more attention to what my administrators were doing on campus. And I said, I don't want to do that. Maybe there are a couple of roles I think I could have gone into, but I think for me, just identifying what my strengths are, I didn't want it to be just because of a title. To say I did this or I did that. So I kind of did, but then I saw more detail. I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah.
Right. So, just in my research for this episode, I've, gone on several district websites, and it was amazing to me the army of people that it requires, above principals. As
Right.
parents, we really just think about teachers and principals pretty much.
Right.
But, the army of people that are in leadership and are in administration, even for kind of a mid-sized district like Mansfield, I think we got like 40,000 students. Is that about right?
35,500 roughly in that range.
Okay.
All right.
So DISD has about 150,000.
Right.
Right. So we're kind of a mid-size, and but there's just a lot of people who do a lot of different jobs that I
Right.
was just like, wow, this is a lot of people, and I have no idea what they do.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to find out a little bit about that today.
Right. Yeah. I know. I had a lot of support from other areas of the district to come in and support me as a teacher, which was really, really helpful. I got to see what their roles were as well. Yeah, so it was good.
Yeah. So before we go any further, we do want to say that it does take a village. So if you hear a great nugget of advice or a great parenting tip, share it with your parent friends. Facebook it, Instagram it, tweet it, link it in, and add the hashtag School Days Show and the hashtag I Am School Days. And also, we do want you guys to be a part of the show. So if you have any questions or comments, give us a call at 214-431-5062. So, Dave, we just heard a couple voices, and nobody knows who those people are yet. So who do we have with us today?
Yes. Okay. So I'm introducing Dr. Jim Vaszauskas, a.k.a. Dr. V. He's in his 37th year of service to Texas schools. He's served as an English teacher and a coach. What did you coach, Dr. V?
I kind of coached a little bit of everything, primarily basketball. I grew up in a basketball community, played basketball at Baylor, and coached for 20 years. Played back with a guy named Vinnie Johnson, who was the microwave. Yeah, he was incredible.
Can you dunk?
I could, but I've put that in the historical. Yeah, that's in my rearview mirror. So.
I think that sounds like a great challenge.
So, yeah.
I'm going to have to look that up, Dr. V. See if I appreciate you dunking.
He's very tall. Y'all can't see him unless you're on Facebook, but he's very tall.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's not digress anymore. So he was a coach, and then for the first 20 years of his career, he taught and coached, and then moved into administrative roles, including positions as an assistant principal, assistant superintendent, associate superintendent, and then superintendent. Dr. V joined the Mansfield Independent School District in the May of 2009 as the associate superintendent of curriculum and instruction, and served in that position for 3.5 years. In 2013, the board named him the interim superintendent and then promoted him to superintendent of schools on July 23rd, 2013. Dr. V earned his Bachelor of Science degree from Baylor University his Master's of Arts from Texas Wesleyan University, and his doctorate in educational leadership from Stephen F. Austin State University. He holds lifetime State Board of Educator certification in English. Do they still do that? Do they still really lifetime one?
No, they've kind of stopped doing that, but I'm still kind of one of the dinosaurs that still
Wow.
has it.
So technically, you could go back in the classroom right now and teach a
Yes,
class. Awesome.
yes,
All right. Health and physical education, and is certified by the state of Texas as a principal and as a superintendent. Dr. V and his wife Cindy met at Baylor University and have been married for 35 years. They are the proud parents of 3 sons, and Dr. V and Cindy reside in the Mansfield ISD district. So it's great that you actually live in District 2, which is wonderful.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, well, welcome.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
And also, Karyn Marcucci is the Mansfield ISD board president. This is her 7th year. Now, you're starting your 7th year on the board. Karyn and her husband, Todd, have lived in Mansfield for more than 15 years. They have 3 daughters that attend school in the district. She is also a big part of the leadership team that helped bring the Big Hope mentoring program to Alice Ponder Elementary School. She graduated from Mississippi School for Mathematics and Science, and she also went to Texas A&M University and the University of Texas at Arlington, where she received her master's in business. Karyn's earlier career includes working as a junior field engineer in the oil fields of West Texas. Sounds like a dirty job.
It was. I loved it. It was a lot of fun.
Did you wear a hard hat?
I absolutely did.
Oh, you have any pictures?
I don't have any on me, but yes, there are some.
We'll get all these
Actually,
pictures.
well, it was so fun. We went to a museum down at Texas A&M with my daughters, and they had a thing on oil drilling, and it made me laugh because my uniform from back in the day was actually part of this exhibit. So I realized, oh my gosh, that was so long ago. It's now a museum exhibit.
That's funny.
Well, we'll have pictures on our website later on.
Dr. V. Duncan and Karyn in her hard hat.
So she worked in the oil fields of West Texas as a process engineer for Engelhard and Tecor Electronics.
Tecor.
While working on her... I'm missing something here. Okay, so after birth, so I'll move on. After the birth of her 3 daughters, she went to work for First Methodist Mansfield, where she is now the executive director of operations. So welcome. Thank you guys both so much for coming. So we're going to jump right in. We want to know from you, Dr. V, what prompted you to want to be a superintendent?
You know, as we talked about, I was a teacher and a coach for 20 years and really loved every minute of that. Really thought that I would retire as a teacher and a coach. Never really had much thought that I would go into administration. As my kids began to get older, they were not interested in the sports that I coached and really had more of an academic bent. And so I thought, you know, I don't want them to feel pressure to try to be a basketball coach's son and not necessarily be a basketball player. I want them to follow their dreams. And so I had a principal in Brock by the name of Jimmy Branch, awesome guy, that encouraged me to move into administration. And when we were a small school, about 110 kids in the high school when I first got there. And so whenever he was out for professional development, I became the administrator on duty. And I found that I really enjoyed the work, and so was just encouraged by people that I had worked for, and made the decision to move into administration, and just got lucky to be in the right place at the right time when Mansfield was looking for a superintendent. So I feel very blessed to serve this wonderful district.
All right. And Karyn, what made you want to be on the board?
So, you know, kids motivate you to do a lot of crazy things. And so I have twins.
That's right.
I have twin daughters that do attend school in Mansfield ISD, and I have a younger one as well. But when the twins were getting ready to go into public ed, I was really surprised that in Mansfield, people were telling me that the school that my daughters were to attend was not a very good school, and it was something that I should look at having them moved. And I tried to understand that a little bit more, and I went and toured the school, and I was so impressed with the teaching that was going on inside of that school, but the school itself was not in great shape. And so I learned more about a bond election that was going to be held that would look at rebuilding some of those elementary schools that really weren't in peak condition. And it really stirred something inside of me. Growing up in Mississippi in public education, I know how important education is for kids. And I thought, if I live in Mansfield ISD, I need to make sure that every school provides opportunities that I want for my kids. I mean, I really do think collectively for the good of all of children that we have. And I had a lot of options where my kids would go to school. I mean, we could afford private school if we wanted to. We could have afforded to move houses, but that's not always the case for everyone. So I really, really felt passionate about making sure that Mansfield ISD provided good quality education for every student that was there. And I learned more and more about what the board's responsibilities were and what was going on. And I found out that one of the sitting board members was thinking about not running for re-election because she had been on the board for a number of years. And I loved her. I thought she did such a great job. And so I kept praying about somebody to fill that spot to keep the good work going on that she was doing. And then I went and heard my preacher preach about Nineveh, and he was talking about Jonah and the whale, and he asked us, what is your Nineveh? What is the thing that God has called you to do that you're not doing? And my husband looked over at me and he said, you're going to run for school board, aren't you? And I said, I think I need to. And so at that point, I really did think it's out of my hands. If the voters don't vote for me, then it's a clear sign. But if I don't take the opportunity, I'll always wonder what was to be. And so I ran for school board and was elected, and really just wanted to continue the good work that had been started by the previous boards and make sure that we were providing good quality education for all of our students. And that's still what drives me to this day. I mean, that's why I continue to serve.
Yeah, it's interesting how for both of you it wasn't necessarily aspirational originally. It was like, I'm going to run, my goal was to become a superintendent, and I'm going to, but as circumstances in life evolved and you kind of walked into different roles, you began to realize that this is where I'm called to be, and here you are. That's awesome.
There was a motto: if it's going to be, it's up to me. And so I really have thought about that a lot. That you know, there's a lot of personal responsibility for our community.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
great.
So, in your opinion, what qualifications, both of you, makes a good superintendent?
I think most often what I hear is the ability to listen, to be approachable. I had a teacher. One of my favorite stories in Mansfield is we had a teacher that we just hired from Dallas ISD, and I was walking down the hall as she was stepping out into the hallway at her school, and she looked at me and she goes, "Aren't you Dr. V?" And I said, "Absolutely." And she goes, "Where's your security team?" And I went, I don't have one." And she said, "I've never worked in a district where the superintendent didn't have security." And I said, "Well, I've never worked in a district. I'd never want to work in a district where I felt like I had to have security." Wow. And she goes, "Can I take your picture? Can I take a selfie with you and send it to all my friends in Dallas? They won't believe that you were just walking down the hallway." And to me, that's the very natural way. You have to be approachable. You have to be visible. You have to listen. And so I think those are all just personal traits, very, very simple personal traits. The golden rule. You have to treat others as you want yourself to be treated.
Yeah.
And I think those are just the simple fundamentals that do make a good superintendent. And I look back on superintendents that I had that I thought were incredibly effective, and that was something they all shared. Very approachable, very down to earth, and those types of things.
I think that's just the qualities of a good leader in any aspect.
I think so too, yes.
Karyn, can I ask a question?
No.
Thank you, sweetheart. No? All right, well, we'll forget you then. All right. So, Karyn, what are the responsibilities of the school board?
So the school board responsibilities really are the hiring and firing of the superintendent, so the management of the superintendent, as well as approving the budget. I mean, those are really our primary responsibilities when you get down to it. We set the overall vision for the district. I think it's real important to remember that school board members are not educators. I mean, I do not have any educational background at all, but I do have a strong sense of what I want my children to learn and what I would like for our community to have their students learn. And so that's the most important thing, is that we try really hard not to get into the day-to-day operations, but we try to give aspirational thoughts to the superintendent. So, for example, our Vision 2020,
Right.
that was a good example of that, where we made it very clear that we wanted all of our kids reading, on or above grade level by third grade. We have no idea how that gets done. We just know that that's a really important thing for our kids to know. We want them to be involved in extracurricular activities. And so we give those responsibilities to the superintendent, and then he figures out how to make it happen. And then what we do is we monitor and see if he's doing what we've asked him to do. And the other part of that is we have to make sure that we resource him properly. So again, we talked about the budget. So, we can give him a list of 100 things, but realistically, he's not going to have the resources to do that. So
Right.
we kind of have to manage those things.
So it's one of those things where you say, okay, Dr. V, we want you to do this.
Yes.
Make it happen.
Yes.
Okay, goodbye.
However,
And then we
you can.
back off, ideally, right?
Yes. Yes.
Ideally.
So.
I'm sorry, babe. You know how I do. I'm
Work it out.
I'm fascinated here. So if they give an initiative, how do you guys work in concert with one another to say, like, if you say, I don't know, that's a good idea, or not? So like, how does the relationship work with you guys?
Well, we don't do that in a vacuum.
No, and I think one of the things that makes Mansfield so special is I'm going to take Vision 2020 as an example. There were about 10 or 15 different community groups that laid eyes on that before we ever took it to the school board the first time.
Gotcha.
There were Rotary clubs. There were preachers. There were community members. There were PTA moms, the Education Foundation board, some teachers, some students. We had a lot of people really look at that as a rough draft and kind of give us feedback before we ever went to the board with it. And then the first time we showed it to the board, we were able to say we've had about 250 members of our community look at this, give us feedback. This is our best recommendation on what we feel like the direction we feel like we need to go. Please think about this. Give us your feedback. And so we give the board a month or two to take it and go talk with their constituents. And then once that's accomplished, the board brings it back, and then they vote it into policy, which I'm just going to tell you, that's the real power of the school board, the ability to put something in board policy. Because once it's in policy, we all are required to follow it. I laugh and say that's the 800-pound gorilla that a school board has, is the ability to put something in policy. And so they adopted our strategic plan into policy. And so I think that's one of the things that makes our board so good, is every major decision that we've made in the last several years has had tremendous community input. And I'll talk more about that as we progress through this show.
Yeah, that's great.
But that really is the key right there, is that it's not just a board of individuals that are making these decisions. We truly, truly try to represent the interested parties and make sure that we're clearly reflecting the goals of our community.
What I want to mention also is that when you say you've reached out to the community, these are not just parents. Just because this is a school, we've got businesses and organizations and whatnot that you have a relationship with, and that you want to find out what their thoughts are, and why is that?
Well, we have
Why is it not just
we
parents?
have taxpayers that fund this, and so we get taxes from a lot of places, and so we have a strong obligation making sure that our taxpayers get value for their money. I mean, we take that very, very seriously. And again, we're trying to create tomorrow's leaders. We need people that are going to be able to lead in our city councils, that are going to be able to lead in our restaurants and lead into all the businesses that we have. And so we're just obligated our community to make sure that they've got a workforce that's ready for them.
And a huge part of my role and a requirement from the board is that I'm active in the community. Just as an example, I serve as the president-elect of the Mansfield Methodist Hospital System Board, or the local board, and then I'm on the Methodist System Board. I'm an ex officio member of the Mansfield Chamber of Commerce. I'm an ex officio member of the Mansfield Education Foundation Board. I regularly attend. I don't go to every meeting, but I try to be a regular attendee at the Mansfield Minority Chamber, so that I get a broad-based collection of group of people who know me and trust me, and I know them, and I have that relationship, and I can pick up the phone and say, I want you to look at something, give me your feedback as a parent, or as a business owner, or as a grandparent, or as just a taxpayer. And so being out and being visible gives me that opportunity a lot. And it's an expectation that the board has. It's part of my contract.
Wow.
And so it's and it really helps. It's important.
Yeah. Well, just as an aside, we were in church, was that 3 weeks ago, worshiping, and I look up and I'm like, is that Dr. V over there? Look at that.
TCAL.
Yeah, he's over here at our church, TCAL. Shout out to TCAL. Hey. But yeah, he and you know, it was just great to see, in the community and being there to support, what we're doing to reach the community. We all have a different role in that, but it was just great to see you there.
Well, thank you, and it was a great service, and congratulations on that beautiful building. And I think you're perfectly located because a lot of people are going to be moving into that area.
Yes.
And that church is perfectly located to make a tremendous difference. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I have tried to do as a superintendent is once a month, once every 6 weeks at the least, but once a month, I try to visit a church in our community that I don't regularly attend.
Yeah.
Just because I want to see our kids, I want to see I want to see our teachers. And I want to have a connection to the faith-based institutions in our district. I just think it's so important. I think there are 5 things that make a great community. People have to feel safe and secure.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have great city government. The infrastructure has to be there. There has to be great health care. There have to be incredible faith-based institutions, and there has to be a really great school system. And if you have all of that, then you have a desirable place to live and grow and raise your family. And I think that's one thing that makes the Mansfield ISD community so strong. I mean, you look at where TCAL came from to where it is today, and then you vision where it's going to be in 15 years.
Yeah.
It's going to be a powerhouse. It already is, but it's going to be a powerhouse. And so I want to support Paul. And I want to support the people who are doing great things in our community.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Well, and we really recognize, too, that our community, even though we're the Mansfield Independent School District, is much larger than just Mansfield.
Right,
and so we
right.
try really hard to be connected to all of our communities that are represented by our students, because there's a lot of diversity.
Good point. So we've talked a little bit about it. What is your job? What do you do? What does the day look like?
Open your door and
Right.
Surprise.
It's and it varies depending on what happens. I mean, and that's really not a very intelligent comment. I just said it varies depending on what happens, but it's the truth. But typically, my primary responsibility, I'm going to use I'm going to use a great analogy that kind of describes what I think a big part of my job was. I ask our principals. I had all of our principals, all of our senior leaders, campus leaders, everybody in the building at one point, and I asked them. I said, "Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about leadership. Let's go on vacation. I want you to write down where you would like to go on vacation and when." And then I got them to stand up, and I said, "Okay, if you're going to the mountains, head to that wall. If you're going to the beach, head to the back wall. If you're going out of the country, head to that wall. If you're just doing a staycation, then come up here." And we were scattered all over the room. And then so I brought them back together, and I said, "Okay, now, if you're going in September, October, or November, go there." And we, just did the calendar.
Yeah.
And we were spread all over the room. And that's a lot like leadership. Because if I tell you we're going to educate students, just like we're going on a vacation, everyone's idea and definition of education is different.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
And as a leader, my job is to set a direction so that we're all working together. So to end that little exercise with the leadership, I said, "Okay, we're going to Hawaii in July." Now, everybody knows when we're going, July 4th. We're going to come back July 10th. Everybody's packing stuff to go to the beach. Everybody's going to arrive at the same time. We're all going in the same place. Well, it's the same thing. With Vision 2020, we've defined what our priorities are. So everything is aligned. So a big part of my job is to align the system. And if I can align the system, then we're going to increase our results. And I think that's a very, very important thing. I'm also responsible for the day-to-day operations, handling issues, hiring and recommending principals, signing off and approving teacher hiring. So just the day-to-day operations of that. If there's a problem, I need to get it solved, or I need to find out what happened. So the board doesn't really get itself involved in day-to-day operations. You know, if your child gets a referral for being tardy and you call a school board member and complain about that, that's really outside their role, because they're required by my contract to bring those issues to me so that I can try to resolve those for the community.
So I know that this probably is an issue sometimes. Parents are not feeling heard at their school. They've gone through the proper channels and they want to take it all the way up to you. What are good reasons for a parent to call your office?
Honestly, I think a good reason for parents to call my office is if they feel they're not being heard, because I can get involved and ensure that the board has a policy and a procedure that's in place that allows the parent to be heard. And if they disagree with the local decision at the campus or the administrator, there's a process to appeal that. And so, that's one of the things that I think our board expects of me, and that I expect of myself, is if I get an email or a phone call from the parent, I ensure that they're contacted, and it's an important piece. So I would say any parent and I can't always guarantee that they're going to get what they want, but I can guarantee you that we're going to get back to them and get them an answer.
Okay.
That's great.
And what are reasons to come to you, to the board?
So I will tell you that so when parents come to me and they've got, kind of a day-to-day operational issue, I do refer them back to our process that we have, and that's really important, because if we don't follow that process, if it does become to the board, if they disagree with those final decisions, they want to bring it to the board, we have to recuse ourselves, and we can't weigh in on that issue because we didn't let the process do its job. And so that's really, really important. I like to hear from the community when they're telling me about things that are working or things that aren't working, so they know what our goals are. And I want to hear from parents when they tell me, I know that you're looking at schools of choice, and have you considered looking at this type of school of choice? That's really a big need I see in our community for the following reasons. And they give me some things like that I can bring back and think about as we're looking at how we're going to increase, educational opportunities for our students. That's when I like to hear from them, what's working, what's not working, but not about specific situations, if that makes sense, but generally as a community, the direction that we're headed and where they see the pitfalls or where they see the opportunities.
So more district issues.
More district issues.
My child didn't, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly, because again, we're not educators, and it's really great to hear from people in our community that are experts in their area and figure out how the school district can better address the needs that they have in their particular area.
And I do want to say that that's not necessarily the case with all boards. There are boards that have educators on there, and I do want to ask you.
But that's not our primary role.
That's not your role to be an educator.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah.
And I've asked this before. We had a whole show with school board members, and just as a voter, I always wonder how to best vote so that my children are impacted and my community is positively impacted. So as a voter, I would think that if the board member has an educational background, then that's the person I need to vote for. So what do you say about that?
I don't think that that's necessarily a positive or a negative. The positive side of that is that they're already familiar with the languages and the things that are going on, and hopefully they have a good, strong understanding of the board role versus the superintendent role and the role they need to play. However, where it can get a little bit difficult is if they feel like they have very strong knowledge, let's say, in something like special education or some special needs education and things like that, they may have a tendency to overstep their bounds. So where we have told the superintendent that we want all of our students reading on or above grade level, that includes our special needs kids, the board has to be careful that particular board member doesn't come to the superintendent and say, hey, this program is really the best program and that's where we need to invest our money, because that's not our job. The superintendent is supposed to evaluate the curriculum that's out there and come to us with a recommendation, and if we don't let him fully do his job, we can't hold him fully responsible for the results.
That's so interesting.
And so it is really interesting to think about that. So I do think that when you're looking at board members, you really need to look, and we're trustees. That's one thing I want to talk about is we're not representatives, we're trustees. And the difference in that is that when people vote for us, they're voting for someone that they think can make the best decision for the kids at that moment. So as we gather more information, as we learn more things, we're entrusted to make the right decision. We're not
Right.
supposed to represent our community. We're supposed to be entrusted to make the best decision, if that makes sense,
yes.
the difference that's there. And so they really want to look at somebody that's involved in the community, that has, good community relations with people, somebody that's approachable, that they could share their concerns with, but also someone that is willing to either support or change the vision. They should be talking about big pictures. They shouldn't be talking about special groups and kids. They should be talking about kids in general that all attend that particular district and what they would like to see for those students in that district, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. Real quick, let's say we want to take a quick break to say that if you have any questions or comments, you want to share your experience or anything like that, please feel free to give us a call at 214-431-5062.
I was just going to say, though, an educational background certainly doesn't preclude someone from serving on the
Absolutely
board.
not.
Daryl Sneed, who is on our board, was a long-time educator, coach, teacher, administrator, and just really had a dominating win to be elected to the board, and has done a remarkable job as a board member. And so I know many school districts around us have former educators, teachers. Arlington ISD has former teachers on their board. Duncanville ISD has former teachers on their board as well. So that certainly doesn't preclude them from serving.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but I wouldn't say that that's a necessary requirement either. And even for people that are looking to run, I would hate for someone to think, oh, well, I
Yeah.
just don't have the experience to be able to do that.
Because I'm sure that people think that, but one of the things you guys have to do is handle budgets. So somebody with a finance background is important.
Mm-hmm.
These are just the things that I learned,
Yes.
Right, from the last episode. Right.
from the last episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so on what criteria does the board evaluate the superintendent?
So that varies from district to district. I mean, the way that they go about doing their evaluations. But we're very clear with Dr. V. He actually receives a list of goals that we have. We're in the process of kind of changing things a little bit with that right now. But we do have a list of goals that we would like to see achieved. And then at the end of the year, we simply look down at the evidence and see if he was able to accomplish those goals or not. And what we're working on right now is through the Texas Education Agency called Lone Star Governance, and we have some goal progress measures that we're looking at, and then that's what the superintendent would be evaluated against. But one of the things that we did to improve transparency is we have a scorecard that is on our website. That is one of the key tools that we use to evaluate the superintendent, to see where he is in the goals that we've set for him. But we're very clear and transparent on the way that we evaluate them. I mean, those goals are shared and we score them, and I don't think it's ever a surprise when you go in there what our comments are going to be, because we've been working on those all year and we look at them on a regular basis.
And that's true. And so once we agree on the goals, then the board, they're called essentially board priority goals, which is what the board expectations are. Then once we've agreed to that, then those board goals become my direct reports goals. So if it's a curriculum instruction goal, then it becomes the goal of the person who oversees curriculum instruction. If it's student services, then it goes to student services. And so it really filters its way down the organizational chart and becomes a district goal. And that's really a good definition of a coherent system in my mind.
Yeah.
So
That's how we get everybody to vacation the same day,
So,
the same location.
yeah.
Right. So, Dr. B, how do you ensure that those goals are being implemented so they come, through your office to the different area superintendents, which goes down to the coordinators and principals, and ultimately down to the teachers, and then resulting in something with the students, depending upon if it's academic per se, or whatever the department is. How do you ensure that those actions are actually being implemented and executed so that they're being achieved?
I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
A couple years ago, one of the goals was to get a handle on workers' compensation. Our workers' compensation dollars, what we were paying out for injured employees, had really risen and was really, really high. And so our goal was to put in training programs that would reduce workers' compensation. So the person who oversees that particular part of the district has to report to me quarterly on how many injuries we've had, what type of training we've had, and how much money that we've had to spend on workers' compensation. So we have a reporting system. It's called a cadence of accountability is the term that we use in Mansfield. But we hear quarterly reports on how we're doing on each one of those goals. They may not all be at the same time, but if we're tracking reading, then we get quarterly reports about what our reading scores are looking like. If we're tracking workers' compensation, then I'll know quarterly, are we on track? Are we over budget, under budget? How are we doing? What types of training that we're doing? And so that's another big part of my role. I wasn't raised in the maintenance and facilities piece of it.
Right.
But we have somebody who's incredible at that, but that person reports back to me. So I have to make sure that the systems are in place so the experts who run those divisions for our district are reporting back to me, and then I'm reporting back to the board.
Yeah, well, I had a paper cut one year. No, really, it was at Donna Shelford. I was cutting one day. It went, it went, and like, I felt like, oh wait, this is not a regular cut. I felt like this is, next thing, whoop. So thank you for that help, and I was able to get my cut taken. You remember that?
I do.
Yeah, it hurt. So thank you for doing that. It had personal impact on me personally.
I don't think it's was it a paper cut?
Well, not paper cut. Paper cutter cut.
Right.
Okay, that's a big difference.
That
A
is true.
huge difference.
Yeah.
Because it makes
It's like you got
it sound like I'm a wimp.
workers' comp for a paper cut.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I meant to say paper cutter cut. It makes it sound like a wimp. Like, this guy had to get anyway. Another quick question.
Awesome.
Paper cutter cut, everybody. That's real. So what happens if a goal is not being met? Let's say whatever the respective department is, and they come back and say, okay, we said we're going to be here, and it's not being, we're not where we want to be. What happens then?
We try to operate with a continuous improvement model, and so if the data comes back and it's below, we try to do just a simple root cause analysis to try to figure out what happened and why, and then we try to take corrective action. But the thing that I love about our board and about the Mansfield School District is we don't just wait for the final data.
Right.
We're tracking data as we go. I mean, if you're trying to lose weight and you don't weigh yourself along the path, you just wait till the end of the year to determine whether or not you're making progress. You're probably not making progress. So you have to track yourself along. And we have a really, we have a really good system in place to track that data. So hopefully we would have known in November or December or January that the trend lines were not supporting improvement, and we try to do something different at that point, rather than just wait till August till we get the final data or the final scores or whatever that is. But in the event all of that fails and we didn't show improvement, then we have to do a self-analysis, root cause analysis, and kind of have that plan, do, study, act. Okay, that didn't work. Let's not do the same thing again. Let's do something different to try to get better.
And that's where the board tries to hold the superintendent accountable to. And at that point, that's where we have to make the decision on the superintendent's evaluation. Do we want to renew his contract another year? Do we think that he has it in him to improve, or do we need to cut our losses? I mean, fortunately, we are looking at this all year long, and so we feel very involved with the improvement process. And when we're not seeing the progress we want to see, we ask, what resources do you need? How can we help change this? And at that point, Dr. V will come to us with his root cause corrective action and let us know if it involves a need in resources or, just a different way of looking at things.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the subject of resources. You mentioned earlier bonds. A lot of people don't know what that is. What are bonds and how do they impact the community?
I think a simple way to understand that is bonds are essentially the district's mortgage. Mm-hmm. We borrow money to build our facilities, and the voters have to approve that before we're able to do it. So that's essentially when we go out for bonds, that money can only be used for facilities and capital improvements and those types of things. It can't be used to pay salaries. It can't be used to fund field trips or anything like that. It's essentially our mortgage payment. is what that is. And then the tax dollars that we all pay, your taxpayers, we're taxpayers, board members are taxpayers in our district, fund the day-to-day operations of our district.
Okay. And so when we've heard of this no increase bond, can you explain what that is and how that impacts me as a taxpayer?
Okay, can you explain a little bit when you say no increase?
So we know that there's this period of time that the bond needs to be paid off. And in theory, when the bond is paid off, then our taxes should go down. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we've heard on the ballot sometimes there's a no increase bond, so saying our taxes are not going to increase. Is that true, and how does that work?
So I think that's a little bit of a misnomer, and I think it's kind of a misdirection play, honestly, when communities and schools say that no increase, because really what they're saying is your taxes are not going to increase, but the years that you're paying that are going to increase. So, if we're paying 40 cents on the dollar for a bond, and we pay that off, then that 40 cents should go away eventually. But if we pass another bond, you're going to continue to pay that. So they say no increase, and what they're saying is your what we're charging you is not going to increase, but it does because it extended longer.
Right.
It'd be like paying off your car, and a month before you pay off your car, you go get another car. Well, your car payment may not increase, but you're paying on it for another 10 years.
Right.
And happened with our minivan, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. We just did that.
So we try really hard not to advertise like that. We try to be a much more above board. And I will say that our staff is going to recommend to our board that we lower our INS tax rate this year. So we're going to be able to drop it a penny. So, and that's a full year and a half before we thought we would be able to do that. So that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
So when I see a bond is going to be on the ballot, what kind of things do I need to consider if I'm going to vote yes or vote no for that?
Well, that's a loaded question for a board member because the board members, we actually vote to put it on the ballot or not. And I will tell you as a board member, I would never want to put anything on the ballot that won't pass. So I take that responsibility very personally, and I want to make sure that we've done everything we can to maximize the use of our current facilities and make sure that there's a real need for what's going on. And the other part of that is, again, we talked about the community buy-in that we have. That bond committee has already had more than 100 people working on that to prioritize the need, to make sure that we're buying the things that we most need for our district, to help us in the immediate years. And so I will tell you that if there's a bond on the ballot in Mansfield, I'm going to say vote for it. Because I know the work that's gone on that it's really needed for the district for future growth. But as a taxpayer, just make sure that due diligence has been done.
Yes, because we do have people that are listening that are outside of Mansfield. We actually have people all over the country listening and all over the world.
And they just need to make sure that same due diligence has been done. They need to make sure that that the board has thoroughly looked at what the needs are and that they've been prioritized by the community as well as by the district itself, and making sure that we're fully using the resources that we currently have. And one of the things that I'll say that Mansfield ISD does that's a little bit different than other districts is our finance department is phenomenal. They're always looking to figure out if they can refund bonds and try to get the best value. And so just making sure that the finance department has done their due diligence to make sure that there's not an opportunity for refunding and things like that to help them reduce the need for that bond.
And I would say to anybody that's out there listening, it's bonds in Texas. It's called a levy in other parts of the United States.
Yes.
So there's a different name for it.
Yeah, Texas is different.
But I think the key to it is, did the committee that recommended that bond, was that a bunch of administrators in a room? And if that's the case, that's a negative thing in my mind. Or is it a bunch of citizens that include grandparents who don't have kids in schools, taxpayers who own businesses, parents of all levels, students? And the bond that we recently passed that we're using to build schools and the playgrounds and those types of things, there was an 80-member committee that included some administrators, some teachers, some community members, some community leaders. And so I didn't even go to every one of those meetings because I didn't want our community to feel like I was influencing what the committee recommended to the board. So everybody puts in their ideas for what they want to have included on the bond. The citizens committee and the bond committee prioritizes and narrows it down to what we can afford. We survey our community based on that recommendation, and we get survey data back about what they like and what they don't like it.
Yeah.
Then the committee goes back and rearranges based on the feedback from the community. Then we take it to the board, and the board gives feedback. They are duly elected by our taxpayers, and so they give feedback on what they think about it, and then at some point the board either has to vote, yes, we want to go out for the bond, or no, we don't. Then once that's approved, we did 100 meetings in our community to communicate exactly what we were going to do. We have a huge bond website on our district where anybody can track every dollar that we've spent. And so I think Mansfield does it right. And so that's what I would want to know if I were a taxpayer. Is it done by the community? Is it recommended from a group of community members? How will we know? How will we track how the dollars are being spent? Those are things I would want to know.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned something great. Find out if it's just a bunch of administrators in a room making a decision in a vacuum,
yes,
or if the community is involved. What's the best way to find that out?
I would call the superintendent or talk to the board members.
Yes,
okay.
That's a great board member question.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, we don't have a whole lot of time, but what I do want to find out is if you had no budget constraints, both of you, what would you change or implement?
Go ahead.
So one of the big things that has been a challenge for us as a board is we want to give our parents as many opportunities for educational choices for their students. And that has been a real financial challenge for us. And so that's one of the things that I would want to do is just to be able to meet our community desire to have a fine arts academy and to have, all these different schools of choices for their kids. I think that would be a real neat opportunity. The other thing that I would really like to do is be able to work with our educators and help put together a school day that really benefits them as far as having proper time to be able to properly plan their lessons and be able to engage with parents and be able to teach, be able to balance that, because that's a real challenge. I would love that. And I would also like to be able to have more educational coaches that could work with our teachers to help them make sure that they're properly engaging the kids with the latest information and technology that's out there and how students learn.
Yeah.
I mean, those are just a few things that come to the top of my mind.
You're getting some Facebook thumbs up on that, by the way.
What we see, about 6 years ago, we looked at where we were academically in Mansfield, and we established, in comparison with the schools that are around us, but then also with schools that were doing better than us at the time. And they might be in different parts of the state, but they look like us, but they're for some reason, they're performing better than we are. And so we went to study those schools. And what we found was that they had more coaches, teacher coaches, that could go in and teach the teachers how to teach certain concepts and help the teachers become familiarized with the changing standards. And so our board made a real commitment to double the number of content coordinators and teacher coaches that we had. And what we saw what we've seen in the last 5 years is those school districts that were performing better than us are now not performing better than us because we've passed them.
Wow.
And it's so having support for the teachers, giving the teachers smaller class sizes with time to plan together, those types of things with an unlimited budget, that would be the one thing. The other thing to me, and in our day and age, our board committed a year ago to put an armed security officer in every one of our schools. And so adding and enhancing security for our students. When the parent drops her or his child off at one of our schools, they shouldn't have to worry about, okay, is my child safe?
Right.
And we've taken steps to make our schools safer.
Yeah.
And with an unlimited budget, I would even enhance that even more. So.
But it's really about student outcomes. I mean, that's really what our focus is how can we best serve the students to help them reach their potential. And so that's where we'd want to spend our dollars, absolutely.
That begs another question that we probably don't have a whole lot of time for, which is, we can't get into that. I was going to ask about state testing and if we could do away with state testing and have some sort of other form of accountability, how would that change things?
Well, I can tell you our district is really doing that. We're working on Vision 2025, which is trying to define what college ready, career ready, and life ready looks like.
Oh, that's good. That's
and
good.
So based on our community values, and so each child will have a scorecard. When you go to a conference, that your child will be able to lay that out in front of you, and you'll know where they are on the college ready or the career ready or life ready standards. I will say one thing about state testing, though. Man, education is expensive, and our community has to know whether or not they're getting value for that.
Absolutely.
So I don't agree with everything, but this is the way Texas is keeping score, and we better pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you don't think Texas is, state testing results are important, ask any realtor out there when you come to sell your house.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
All right. And when you're trying to buy a house, you're looking at test scores. And so, I'm proud to say that, Mansfield does really well in that area. And I think it's really important, and so does our board.
So we believe in accountability to taxpayers, and that's the easiest way to do that. But I do like the more portfolio-based approach, where you can show the growth the students have. I really think that that's one of the things that's key. And we do have some, like my youngest daughter is over at the Jerry Knight STEM Academy, and it's really interesting because that's part of what they're working on with her, is we do have the standardized scores, but she's actually putting together a portfolio so that we can see her growth in the subjects over time. And so I think there's some real opportunities for that. But again, that's very time and resource intensive, and so it's really difficult for a high school teacher to be able to do that with more than 100 students to help them with that. But that would be ideal, I think, is just being able to show that growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a taxpayer and as a mom, I am a big believer that we have to hold our schools accountable. I think that we're not getting it right, and we've spoken to enough administrators and teachers on this show just to know that there do need to be some changes, and I know that we continue to make changes, but just was curious if you could have it your way.
Parents should engage at that too, because I will tell you that there are certain subjects that my kids are good at. They're better at some than others, and so I want to at least see growth. And so I don't always just take the score that's on there. I mean, that's where the parent-teacher conference comes in, right? Can you show me how my student has grown?
Yeah.
So there's already some opportunities to engage.
And on a personal note, I was a personal recipient of one of those math coaches who really helped me become stronger. I felt pretty good about myself coming in. I mean, she's like, you know what? You need to. Have you ever thought about this before? I'm like, oh, really? Even to the point where my last year in the classroom, I did the flipped classroom at my school, and I never would have thought of doing that before. I was really encouraged in that, and we got some some great results as a result of it. So I'm a personal recipient of that push and encouragement as an educator. So thank you on that end to help drive excellence in the classroom for all of our students.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. That our hour always goes so quickly. So thank you guys so much for joining us. This was a great show. Right now, we always want to let you know what's going on with Noggin. So what's going on with Noggin Coaching, David?
Okay, so as we've been talking about in the past weeks, this is a great time to prepare for college entrance exams. Well, it's always a great time to prepare for state tests. But really going in and preparing, it's not just for high school juniors and seniors, but really going in earlier on, middle school, getting ready for the PSAT 8-9, the PSAT 10, and the ACT prep as well. But also it's a great time just to reflect on how your child did during the school year and what are some areas that they can grow in. Noggin, we can help you with that. And also just preparing and getting ahead for the school year. It's never too early to get a good start. We have several clients who get started on work ahead of time, and then when they come into the next school year, they've already been exposed to it, and now they're ready to hit the ground running. And I was a personal recipient of that in high school as well, and I got advanced ahead in some math classes. It really helped me out as well. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us at info@noggineducation.com, NOGGIN education.com. We'd love to sit down with you and share how we can help your child grow.
And with Noggin Educational Foundation, we are on week 2 of SPARK. That stands for Summers Producing Academically Ready Kids. This is our 6-week math and reading program. We serve students from low-income families. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, we would love for you guys to come and volunteer and work with students. Go ahead and email me at info@schooldaysshow.com. So, Dave, what's happening next week?
So next week, we are having our kid takeover episode. This is where we're taking our students are taking over the studio, like we did that back during spring break, and we will welcome back in the co-host seat Senior Hunter Paris to introduce one of our summer interns, Maya Dabney, as well, and then and also the student Jocelyn Zeppelin as well. So we want to hear from the students. We want to hear their perspectives on things, and just they're going to go all in.
Yeah, we're excited about the Kid Takeover episode. We've invited them to talk about social media and how it impacts them socially and how it impacts them academically. So that'll be a really good show.
I'm interested. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I am too. And I'm sad I don't get to sit in this seat, but I'll be on social media talking about it while y'all are doing that. So as always, head to our website, schooldaysshow.com, for more information. And remember, you don't ever have to miss a show. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher, and really any place that you download your favorite podcast. And also, we always want you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Noggin Foundation. That's Noggin. Right now I'm posting a lot of cute pictures of kids, so you can see that we do a lot of fun hands-on math and reading activities and games. And go ahead and like our stuff and follow us on that. And the last thing we always want to end with is that we are parenting by grace. David and I depend on God to give us the wisdom and strength we need to raise our kids into flourishing adults. And if you'd like to know more about that, email us at info@schooldaysshow.com. Have a great week.
School Dazed is sponsored by Noggin Educational Foundation. At Noggin, we provide free educational resources to students from low-income families and support to their parents like the preceding broadcast. School Dazed is made possible by the generosity of listeners just like you. Please consider donating to Noggin at Noggin, Noggin, foundation.org.
Drumming my pain with his finger.